Thanks for tuning into Cheating Confessions. Don't miss the jaw-dropping conclusion. Yesterday was a day I'll always remember. It started like any other day, but my nephew, Ethan, surprised me in a way I didn't expect. I live in Seattle, a city known for its beautiful parks and mild weather. The sun was shining through the window, filling the kitchen with warm light as I decided to make breakfast. It felt like a perfect, quiet morning. I got up, brushed my teeth, and made my way to the kitchen, excited to cook something special. At 45, I take pleasure in small routines like this, enjoying a quiet moment before the day unfolds. My nephew, who's 17, had been staying with us for the summer, and we've developed a nice morning tradition. I decided to make pancakes, Ethan's favorite. As I mixed the batter, I could hear the birds chirping outside and the faint hum of traffic in the distance. The kitchen smelled like coffee and fresh air. It was peaceful. When the pancakes started sizzling on the griddle, Ethan walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes and giving me a sleepy smile. "What's for breakfast?" he asked, his face lighting up when I told him we were having pancakes. I flipped the pancakes, the sweet smell filling the air, and we both laughed. It was a calm and happy moment. Just as I was about to serve the first stack, Ethan suddenly said, "Let's go on an adventure today." His voice had an excitement that felt different from our usual lazy mornings. I raised an eyebrow, curious about what he meant. We often took short walks around the neighborhood or visited nearby parks, but this felt different. He started talking about visiting Discovery Park, a large and beautiful place near the water, where we could explore and maybe even search for hidden treasures. The idea thrilled me. After breakfast, we grabbed some snacks and headed out. The sun was even brighter now, and I felt energized by the prospect of spending the day outdoors. We walked through Discovery Park, which is one of the most beautiful parks in Seattle. The air felt fresh, and the wide, open trails stretched before us. It wasn't the first time we had been here, but something about today felt more exciting. Ethan had brought a small backpack packed with snacks and a notebook where he liked to sketch things he found interesting. He always had an eye for the little details, which made our walks feel like mini adventures. As we wandered deeper into the park, the greenery became denser. We passed large trees, unusual rocks, and clusters of wildflowers. Every now and then, Ethan would stop and point out something he thought was cool, a bird nest high up in a tree, or a particularly shiny rock. His excitement was contagious. We found a quiet spot by the water to take a break. Ethan pulled out a couple of granola bars and handed me one. "I think we can find something really special today," he said with a grin, his enthusiasm reminding me of the adventurous spirit I used to have at his age. By the time we finished our snacks, I realized how much fun I was having. It wasn't just another morning walk. It felt like a small escape from the ordinary, and it was all thanks to my nephew's adventurous spirit. At 45, I didn't usually think about spontaneous adventures, but today was different. After our break, we continued exploring Discovery Park. Ethan's excitement never wavered, and soon he found a small, hidden trail that I had never noticed before. "Let's see where this goes," he said, leading the way with a confident stride. I followed, curious about what we'd discover next. The trail was narrow, and branches reached over our heads as we made our way through. Ethan, always a bit more daring than I was at his age, kept moving ahead, occasionally turning back with that same bright smile. "You're going to love this," he said, laughing. Eventually, the trail opened up into a small, secluded clearing surrounded by trees. There was a little stream running through it, and the sound of the water added a sense of calm to the moment. Ethan knelt by the stream, inspecting rocks and skipping a few across the water. His youthful energy was contagious, and for a moment, I forgot about the outside world entirely. We spent the next hour or so just enjoying the simplicity of nature, talking about everything and nothing. I could tell that this day would stick with both of us for a long time. It wasn't just the adventure or the exploration, it was the time spent together, away from everything else. When we finally decided to head back, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected. The park seemed even more beautiful now, and the time spent with Ethan had turned an ordinary morning into something special. By the time we got home, the sun was starting to dip in the sky, and I was tired but happy. I never expected a simple breakfast and a walk to turn into a day I'd always remember. I realized then that I hadn't just made pancakes that morning. I'd created a memory that I'd cherish for a long time. I had a feeling the next day was going to be just as good. The sunlight streamed in through the windows again, and I felt that same excitement I had yesterday. This time, I decided to make something a bit different. Eggs and bacon, my personal favorite. I could smell the fresh air as it drifted in through the window, mingling with the aroma of breakfast. I started cooking, the sizzle of bacon filling the kitchen with its familiar, comforting sound. As I cooked, I enjoyed the quiet moment. These early mornings gave me time to think, to plan the day, and just appreciate the stillness before everything got busy. It was like my own little slice of peace before the world woke up. I was almost finished when it hit me. I forgot something important. Hot dogs. They were Ethan's absolute favorite, and I knew he'd ask for them as soon as he walked into the kitchen. He always did. It had become a sort of tradition for us whenever we had breakfast together. Panic started to creep in. How could I forget the hot dogs? I could already imagine the look of disappointment on Ethan's face when he saw they weren't on the table. He had this funny attachment to hot dogs. Didn't matter what else was on the menu, as long as they were there. It was one of those small quirks that made him so unique. I started searching the fridge and cabinets frantically, hoping to find some hot dogs hidden away. Oh no, where are they? I muttered to myself, feeling the pressure build. Ethan would be down any minute, and I didn't want to let him down. Just as I was about to give up, I heard his voice behind me, calm and collected. "What's got you so worked up, Alex?" he asked, using the nickname he always called me. His tone was relaxed, and he had that easy smile on his face. It startled me for a second. I hadn't even heard him come into the room. I turned to face him, feeling a little embarrassed. "Oh, well," I stammered. I forgot to cook your favorite hot dogs," I admitted, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me. I had been so caught up in making everything else that I forgot the one thing I knew he would want. Ethan just smiled wider, a bit of humor twinkling in his eyes. "Don't worry about it, Alex. It's just breakfast. Besides, we had plenty of hot dogs yesterday." His response caught me off guard. Usually, Ethan would be quick to point out if something wasn't the way he liked, but this time, he seemed completely unfazed. It was the first time I'd seen him so relaxed about something like this. Normally, Ethan, with his teenage moods, could be unpredictable. But today, he was calm, collected, and even cheerful. At 17, he was often in that in-between stage of wanting independence, but still holding on to childhood comforts, like his love for hot dogs. "Are you sure?" I asked, still feeling the need to make it up to him somehow. "I know how much you like them." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You don't always have to worry about me, Alex. I'm fine without them for one day." I stood there for a moment, taken aback. It was strange seeing this side of him, almost like he had matured overnight. There was a certain ease about him that I hadn't noticed before. It made me smile, seeing how much he was growing up, and yet it also made me realize that time was moving faster than I thought. "Well, if you're sure," I said, still a bit unsure about how to handle this more relaxed version of Ethan. He usually wasn't this easygoing. But seriously, I can whip up some hot dogs in no time. Ethan shook his head again, that same calm smile on his face. "It's okay, really. Besides, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." "Oh, what's that?" I asked, curious now. It wasn't often that he came to me with something serious. He looked at me for a second, as if he was thinking about how to say it. "Do you ever feel like you're too focused on the little things?" he finally asked, his voice thoughtful. "Like, you worry too much about stuff that doesn't really matter?" I blinked, caught off guard by his question. This was not the kind of conversation I expected to have with him on a random morning. "I guess sometimes," I admitted. "But I don't think it's a bad thing to care about details." Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, but in a relaxed way. "Yeah, but maybe it's good to let go sometimes, you know? Just enjoy things without worrying about whether everything's perfect." I smiled at his words, realizing how much he had grown in such a short time. "You're right," I said. "Sometimes I do get caught up in making sure everything's just right. Maybe I should take a page out of your book." He grinned. "Glad you see it my way." Now, how about we just enjoy breakfast, without the hot dogs this time? We sat down at the kitchen table, and despite the absence of hot dogs, the breakfast still felt perfect. The bacon was crispy, the eggs fluffy, and the morning sun filled the room with a golden glow. Ethan seemed content, and his relaxed demeanor put me at ease. As we ate, we talked about random things, movies we wanted to watch, the park from the day before, and what plans we had for the weekend. It was nice, just the two of us, enjoying a quiet breakfast. It made me realize that it wasn't always about getting everything right. Sometimes, it was just about being present and appreciating the moment. After breakfast, Ethan suggested we go back to Discovery Park for another walk. I know we went yesterday, but I think we missed a few cool spots, he said with a grin. His adventurous spirit was hard to resist, and I found myself agreeing. The weather was perfect again as we set off, the city coming to life around us. Seattle had this way of feeling both vibrant and peaceful at the same time, and it made me appreciate the balance of city life and nature. Discovery Park was one of those places where you could escape the noise and just breathe. We retraced some of the paths we had walked the day before, but this time we ventured further, taking turns we hadn't explored yet. Ethan's enthusiasm for exploring was infectious, and before long, we were deep into the park, discovering new corners and hidden gems. At one point, we found a small hill with a perfect view of the Puget Sound, the water shimmering in the distance. As we stood on the hill, Ethan pointed out a few boats drifting lazily across the water, and we both just took in the peaceful view. There was something calming about standing there, far from the busyness of the city, with nothing but the sound of the breeze and the distant calls of seagulls. It felt like a moment suspended in time. "Thanks for coming out here with me," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "I know you're usually busy with work and stuff." I smiled, looking at him. "Of course, Ethan. I wouldn't want to miss out on days like this." It was true. Moments like these were rare, and I was glad I took the time to just enjoy the simplicity of spending the day outdoors with my nephew. We spent a bit longer on the hill before making our way back down the trail. As we walked, Ethan talked about wanting to go hiking more often, maybe even planning a bigger trip outside the city. I could tell he was thinking ahead, eager for more adventures. It made me proud to see how he was growing into a thoughtful young man, ready to take on the world with curiosity and excitement. By the time we got home, the sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow across the neighborhood. We were both tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes from a day well spent. I knew that this weekend had been one to remember, and I looked forward to many more days like this. That evening, after we got home, Ethan headed upstairs to unwind, and I found myself reflecting on the day. It had been such a simple weekend, no grand plans, no extravagant outings, but it had turned into something meaningful. Spending time with Ethan, seeing him grow and mature, reminded me how important it was to slow down and appreciate the people around us. Later, Ethan came back downstairs and joined me on the couch. We watched a movie together, something light and funny, and the laughter filled the room. It felt like the perfect ending to a weekend full of little adventures and meaningful moments. As the movie ended and the credits rolled, Ethan turned to me and smiled. "Thanks for today, Alex. I had a great time." I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Me too, Ethan. Anytime." We both sat there for a moment in comfortable silence before heading to bed. I realized as I lay there that it wasn't the hot dogs or the perfect breakfast that made the day special. It was the time spent together, the quiet moments, and the unexpected adventures that turned an ordinary day into something unforgettable. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace, knowing that these memories with Ethan would be cherished for a long time. I had learned to let go of the little things and focus on what really mattered, the joy of simply being present, sharing moments with the ones you love. Thanks for watching. The next story is ready and just as thrilling. Subscribe to catch new stories every day.